welcome. My name's Chris Cann with Harbour Insight, and with me I have Andrew Penkethman, who is Chief Executive of Ardea Resources. Ardea is in the process of putting together the feasibility studies and background work around its massive Kalgoorlie Nickel Project, obviously around the Kalgoorlie area of Western Australia. This is part of a series of conversations that we're having with Andrew just to get a bit deeper into the project details, understand what it's likely to look like as it matures further. In this first conversation, we're going to look at the contextual background of the Kalgoorlie Nickel Project and get into some of the details around the studies and the work that's been done so far. Welcome, Andrew.
Yeah, great to catch up, Chris.
Great to have you with us. Wanted to start just on that, the feasibility published in 2023. A lot of information in there, obviously, a really thorough piece of work. Can you just take us through that background, the key numbers, reserves, resources, operational details, mine life, and then obviously those key economics around NPV and IRR?
Sure. So look, that was our 5 July 2023 pre-feasibility study completed by the Ardea team on our flagship Kalgoorlie Nickel Project, Goongarrie Hub, and the project's located approximately 70 kilometres northwest of the city of Kalgoorlie-Boulder. So we got direct access to the Goldfields Highway, the rail line running adjacent to the highway. We got optic fibre cable. We got the gas pipeline 30 kilometres to our east. And for those not familiar with the city of Kalgoorlie-Boulder, it is the resource capital of Australia with continuous mining over 140 years. So very supportive local community who understand the resources sector. In terms of our PFS, we defined a 40-year mine life, processing ore using conventional processing technology, so high pressure acid leach autoclaves. We were looking to produce on average 30,000 tonnes of nickel and 2,000 tonnes of cobalt every year for 40 years. So globally significant project underpinned by a massive resource. And when we completed the PFS, we only assessed 6 of 9 mineral deposits. So in reality, we expect this project to be going for 50 plus years. The capex for the project was about $3.1 billion Australian. So in terms of the project financial metrics, NPV of just under $5 billion Australian, internal rate of return of 23%. So very much a globally significant project, and like all resource projects, very, very much the key value drivers are the commodity price, the recovery, and in this case, our largest cost consumable is sulphur for producing sulphuric acid on site.
Okay, and you've mentioned, obviously, it's a very large project. It's a very large, long life project. Nickel, I think in most economies, it's been identified as a critical mineral or strategic mineral, depending on your local parlance. There is a massive JV that's attached to this. Can you just give us a bit of background? We will go into it in more detail in a separate conversation, but just understanding the Sumitomo Mitsubishi relationship when that was established, and just broadly what that looks like for you.
Sure. So we're in partnership with Sumitomo Metal Mining and Mitsubishi Corporation, two very large, successful resource-focused companies out of Japan. Sumitomo Metal Mining is the world's most integrated company within the nickel supply chain, and Mitsubishi Corporation, very much a household name and successfully investing in the Australian resources sector and contributing to the Australian economy for many decades now. We formed a incorporated joint venture last year, but it all started with a memorandum of understanding that coincided with our 5 July 2023 pre-feasibility study. And since then, we've obviously been working incredibly closely together. The consortium will be progressively earning a 50% interest in the project.
Okay. As I said, we'll dive into that in a lot more depth in a different conversation. You mentioned the pre-feasibility. We are looking forward to seeing a definitive feasibility at some point. Is that largely just going to be a more confident, more detailed piece of work as you'd expect, or are there changes that the market should be looking out for in terms of what was published previously versus what will be coming out shortly?
Look, we'll be doing a lot more detailed engineering and increasing the level of engineering to approximately 30% with the definitive feasibility study. And the key changes are when we completed the 2023 PFS, our base case product was mixed hydroxide precipitate. In collaboration with the Japanese consortium, we've made the flow sheet change to produce a mixed sulfide precipitate. So that's the main change to the flow sheet.
What's the key difference there? What's driving that? Obviously, your joint venture partners are saying this is the product that we want.
Yeah.
What's the difference with what you'd originally scoped?
Yeah, we see a number of benefits in producing MSP. So just some high-level differences. MHP tends to grade about 45% nickel and 2% cobalt. Their largest production of MHP is currently out of Indonesia. There are fewer companies producing MSP, but equally it's a very in-demand product, but it tends to average sort of 55 to 60% nickel, 3% cobalt. So you're transporting more nickel and cobalt units per tonne of material moved, and therefore your transport costs are more cost effective, and similarly there's fewer CO2 emissions involved with transporting that material both by conventional road and then shipping. So we see MSP as being a superior end product to produce.
Okay, and as part of the work that's ongoing at the moment, the rigs are still turning. There's resource definition drilling in progress and the results are coming back. There were some really encouraging, or what looked at least to me as really encouraging results, particularly around the grade from those drilling efforts. Is there anything coming through from there that is changing the complexion, of what the project might look like? Anything that would suggest that there are other upsides that you hadn't previously considered, or is it really just a matter of building that confidence?
I think there's an element of both, and it's a really good point, Chris. So with the infill resource definition drilling, we've closed the drill hole spacing down to 40 by 40 metre spacing within the areas that we feel will provide the predominant ore feed for at least the first 5 years of operations, and that's increasing our confidence levels, and we expect that to define measured mineral resources that will be available for conversion to proven ore reserves once we apply all the modifying factors. So increased confidence, but we're also finding that some of the extents of the nickel cobalt mineralisation are greater than anticipated, so we need to do the detailed work, but early indications are that we expect some more ore than was previously expected based on the PFS data. And we're also assaying for scandium throughout the data set, and scandium's also another very important critical mineral, and it's a potential byproduct credit. So to be clear, the project development plan for the DFS, it's based on being a globally significant nickel cobalt producer, but we're not forgetting the optionality of scandium as a byproduct, potential byproduct in the future as well. And with the increased data density through the infill definition drilling, we're getting a much firmer grasp on the scandium as well.
Looking at the nature of the ore body, in Australia, laterites haven't got as much recognition as in other parts of the world, although a dominant source of nickel globally. Can you give us a better understanding of how it's processed? I think that's been one of the sticking points for a lot of people in understanding laterites as a nickel source, particularly when you're looking at the sulfide pedigree or history of Australian nickel projects. What does the flow sheet look like? There's an acid neutralization aspect as well, which you've introduced, which I understand is quite exciting. And then how does that come through in the recoveries and what you're expecting at the other end?
So traditionally, sulfide nickel was the dominant global source of nickel, but over the course of the last 20 years, and particularly acceleration over the last decade. We now see laterite or oxide nickel providing about 80% of the global nickel supply. So there's no doubting that nickel laterites are the most important source of nickel globally, and we expect that will continue to be the case, particularly as large-scale significant projects such as the Kalgoorlie Nickel Project are developed. With treating the ore from oxides or laterite deposits, the most effective means of processing is through what we call autoclaves or high-pressure acid leach. So the ore is crushed and ground. It may be beneficiated depending on the ore type. Then it goes into the autoclave and is mixed with sulfuric acid to take the ore into solution so that the nickel and cobalt can be separated from the waste minerals. Ultimately, the nickel and cobalt are purified in a product such as MSP in the case of the Kalgoorlie Nickel Project. And then the waste is disposed. That's using the autoclaves under high pressure and high temperature to release those ore-bearing minerals, and most autoclaves operate at a temperature between 250 and 260 degrees Celsius. So high temperature, high pressure, but it's very much off-the-shelf technology, proven technology. The autoclaves are titanium lined so that they can deal with the high temperatures and pressures. There's specialised pumps for moving that material through the various process plant circuits. So very well understood processing route that's been around since the 1950s, starting with Moa Bay in Cuba, and we've continued to see great advances in that technology. And we're now up to the fifth generation, and we've seen the rapid increase in nickel laterite development and processing in Indonesia and Philippines through our partners Sumitomo Middle Mining. So that technology, very well understood, very successful, and it'll continue to play a very important role in providing the nickel we need for traditional uses such as stainless steel, but more importantly the energy transition, electric vehicles and massive battery energy storage as well.
And if you can just give us a little bit of a feel for what investors should be looking out for. Work on the DFS continuing, so obviously a publication date there, or an expected anticipated publication date there would be great. Any other milestones that are coming up that the market should be looking out for from the Ardea stable?
So the DFS got a budget of $98.5 million. Significant workflow underway. DFS broken into 6 key work areas: process, non-process infrastructure, geology, mining approvals, and groundwater and specialist service providers involved. So a huge amount of work underway. We've got a owners team of approximately 50 personnel, many more than that involved in all the key service providers working with us on the DFS. So there'll be various DFS updates, including infill drilling, metallurgy, in due course, resource update, and ultimately the final deliverable will be the detailed DFS report, including the ore reserve and financial metrics. Really looking forward to that milestone. Current schedule is late 2025 for completion of the DFS. We're continuing to evaluate that with the KNPL team and our partners. Other key work streams, we anticipate renewal of our federal government major project status. We're going to be working more closely with the state government of Western Australia and applying for what we call lead agency status. And both those major project status and lead agency status, help you with expediting the project approvals and coordinating with both the state and federal government to expedite the project, because it is very much both state and national significance.
Obviously, there's some work to be done before you can get those into full throttle and actually put in the full applications. But how does it feel at the moment? What is the process looking like, and does it feel like everything's in place to get a good result there?
Look, it very much does, and we're currently advancing the level of engineering as part of the DFS so that we've locked in the project development plan as close to final as we can, so that when we submit our environmental approvals, there'll be no amendments, so we don't risk disrupting that process. And given the scale and the significance of the project, we anticipate having to go through both state and federal approvals, but it's a very well-known and well-established process. And yeah, we're really looking forward to expediting our engagement with all the key regulators, getting the approvals lodged, and subsequently getting the approval. And given the number of resource projects and the support and understanding for the resources sector around the city of Kalgoorlie-Boulder and more broadly the Eastern Goldfields, we anticipate strong support.
Andrew, we're going to jump into a lot of these points that we've talked about today in more detail, but I think we'll leave it there. So thanks very much for your time.
No, great to catch up. Thanks, Chris.